Up next here on C-SPAN, we'll be hearing from David Burnham, author of the book The Rise of the Computer State. He was speaking before the Information Industry Association.
I'm Bob Willard with the Information Industry Association. I noticed there are a number of new faces here at this meeting, and we're also joined by a somewhat larger audience today in that we're being taped by C-SPAN for broadcast on the Cable Satellite Public Affairs Network. So I think it might be worth just a minute to tell you a little bit about this group. That we were founded over 5 years ago, and we've met generally on a monthly basis for the 5 years to talk about some of the major policy issues affecting the world of computers and communications and information. We've had this breakfast program going now, and I think we've heard all the jokes there are to hear about this ungodly hour. But I think this morning, our speaker is no stranger to communicating with people at this time of day. His articles have appeared on the breakfast tables of countless Americans who believe that these times demand the Times, specifically the New York Times. David Burnham's articles are the ones that people in this room probably turn to instinctively and read from top to bottom, for he covers many of the policy developments in communications and information that we find so important. This is quite a week for attention to that sort of article. I think this morning New York Times carries a story, not by Dave, about access to the medical records at Sloan Kettering by some students, and we've heard about the access to the Los Alamos records. Well, Dave's focus is a little bit different than access to the computers, but he is concerned about the role computers have in our day-to-day life. He's the author of this book called The Rise of the Computer State. You may notice that I'm referring to something strange on the podium here. I'm actually using a computer myself just for the notes for this introductory remarks, but I wanted to do that specifically because the subtitle of Dave's book is The Threat to Our Freedoms, Our Ethics, and Our Democratic Process. And Dave, I just wanted to let you know that I've written a program in here that you may consider a threat. It will beep at you about 2 minutes before it's time for you to finish. Dave Burnham.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Bob. And good morning to all of you. I feel a little bit like, considering how all of you are full-time computer experts, a little bit like Daniel in the lion's den. And I hope to continue that analogy, that you will see that what I hope to do is pull a single thorn from your collective paw, and that we can go on and be friends forever after. My thesis is that computers, in connection with the bureaucracies of our age, public and private, are gradually increasing the power of large organizations, that the computers as used by the large organizations are undermining the representative process gradually, and that computers as we are using them are changing our ethics, changing the way we look at the world, changing the way we think. What I tried to do in the book was find hundreds of examples, or as many examples as I could, of this that have happened, that we're all aware of. It's going on so, I believe, so swiftly and so quietly that we don't see it unless it kind of hits us directly. And we all are so occupied in our daily pursuits that we don't see it. One way this hit me recently, this involves a story of the New York Times, and is not in the book because it happened after I finished the book. The New York Times, as you can imagine, has a large word processor, computer, and all of that, and we use it for exchanging messages, and it's quite an open system. It has to be. It's so many people all over the world, and we want to communicate with each other. A few years ago, Abe Rosenthal, the executive editor of the Times, and one of our best reporters, a guy named Friedman in Lebanon, got into a really hot argument about how a particular story had been edited. And there was this exchange of memos back and forth. They're both honorable men, and there was a disagreement, and there was back and forth. Well, naturally, that kind of thing is picked up by the computer buffs in the newsroom. And Abe is having an argument with Friedman, you know, and a copy is made of this exchange, and it appears in the Village Voice. Abe Rosenthal likes leaks, you know, in the CIA and the FCC. He does not like leaks in the New York Times, like any executive. And he was furious. A few months later, a memorandum was published. Naturally, it was not signed by Mr. Rosenthal, because like all good executives, he doesn't sign all memorandums. It's signed by Jimmy Greenfield. And it began by saying, strangely enough, that gentlemen do not read other gentlemen's mail. I'm sure the women in this room will appreciate that. The women reporters loved it. It then said that certain things were forbidden on the New York Times computer. No one from now on was to write novels and books on the New York Times computer. A lot of people do that on their off time. It's a problem for an organization. No one is to play games anymore. Some of the night rewrite guys were apparently playing chess. And it said it also is forbidden to go in other people's directories. And it then said, and this is the curious and interesting part, it then said, these rules will be enforced by periodic inspection of everybody's directory. Now, if any of your bosses, or those of you who are bosses, announced that you from now on are going to start going in the desk drawers of your people at your office, we would all be enraged. Say, it's none of your damn business what I have in my desk drawer. You may own that desk, but that's my business. This was totally unnoticed at the New York Times. No one understood that the technology was changing our ethics. It just boom. And I'm not sure they're doing it. Probably they aren't doing it, but there's a little example right at home how, with no notice, nobody picked it up really, nobody made an observation, hey, what's going on? And I think there's a lot of examples like that around that we tend to just let slide by us. And what I argue very strongly in the book is if we're smart enough and if we are aware enough, we can spot those things and stop them, pass laws and regulations and practices, and hopefully live with a computer. I argue in the book I am not a Luddite. I'm not trying to smash these machines. One of the great difficulty of dealing with this problem is that it gives us everything, it gives us so much that we want. We want instant telephone communication. We want instant credit. We want this mobility. We want this certain kind of freedoms that it gives us. And it is so seductive that we don't stop and think, and we don't work on it. We were sitting here at breakfast. I have a friend in Los Angeles who's a lawyer. About 10 years ago, this guy helped out his brother. His brother had run into financial difficulty and was unable to pay his rent one month. And so he wrote a check for his brother for the rent to his brother's apartment. 5 years went by. His brother got into financial difficulty again, no connection with the lawyer, and his brother was evicted. 3 more years went by. And my friend, the lawyer, unfortunately got into a divorce and had to get an apartment so that his children could come visit him on weekends. And he went to one apartment, they said, no, we don't want you. He went to another, no, we don't want you. The third, no, we don't want you. Fourth one, the agent said, well, you're on the registry. And he said, what registry? He said, you know, the landlord's registry. I didn't know there was a registry. Why am I on it? He said, well, you were evicted. I was never evicted. And it turned out, you know, a little mistake had been made. He had written this check for his brother, and that had gotten into the records that he had been evicted. And he continued doing research on it, and he found a woman who had had cockroaches in her apartment and had made a complaint to the landlord. The landlord had come in and started eviction proceedings against her. She had gone into court. The judge had thrown the case out. What was in the record? Just that the eviction proceedings had been begun against her. He found another case where the landlady had said that her tenant had dirty fingernails. And of course, not of course, but in this case, the tenant has no rights. There's no law that says the landlord has to inform the person of this. There's no law that he has the right to see the record. There's no law saying he has the right to correct it. I mean, I'm not sure those standard remedies are enough, but there's no such thing in Los Angeles. And this lawyer went up to Sacramento and started trying to get a law, and the real estate industry came in, and you know how far that law went. Didn't go anywhere. It got stopped instantly. This same system is coming to Washington now, right? And there's no law on it. Now, that's a nice story about how, as we all know, information is power. It's a nice story because it illustrates there is some kind of solution to it if we think about it, if we develop a constituency for it. It's a nice story. I'm sure I'll get a question saying, well, that could have been done with handwritten records. Of course it could have been, but it's much more convenient and quicker to do it with a small computer. And there are lots of other examples of this. The recent model Cadillac, some of you must have seen this story, has the little computer in it that they sell as increasing fuel efficiency, and it has a little thing that warns you when to take it into the mechanic if there's some problem. A little sign flashes up, take it into the mechanic. And that's wonderful, but what the manual doesn't tell you is when you take it in, the mechanic opens it, he can determine how many times you turn the car on after you were instructed to bring it into the mechanic. He can also tell the mechanic how fast you drove. Now, I've forgotten, one of the electronic magazines spotted this a year or so ago and said, hey, is General Motors planning to get out of its warranty? And General Motors said, oh, no, not at all. No. But again, as all of us know at this table, when information is collected, information is used. And that gets us into this very difficult problem. Are we collecting too much information? I mean, including the New York Times. And what do we do about it? How do we deal with the First Amendment? Another example about values that I like is maybe you know her. There's a woman who is a professor emeritus at Berkeley named Ida Hoos, who's written a wonderful tirade against systems analysis, which if you've not read it, everybody ought to read. And Ida, a few years ago, her husband, who was the vice chancellor at Berkeley, was dying, in fact. She does not relate this incident specifically to the death of her husband, and he went into Kaiser Hospital, and she noticed that there was a new nurse on each shift. And the second day came around, and there was a new morning nurse, and then there was a new afternoon nurse, and there was a new night nurse. And the third day, there was a whole new cast of characters. And she went to the head of the hospital, and she said, I think my husband would get a lot better care if the same nurses were coming in. They'd know what was wrong with them. They'd know where the ladies' room or gentleman's room was. They'd know where the coffee was, what have you. And the head of the hospital said, well, we did a cost-benefit study, and we determined it was cheaper not to have a permanent nursing staff. It's cheaper to bring nurses in off the patient inventory, off the patient registry, according to patient inventory. You know, the head of a hospital, according to patient inventory. Do you like being, as a patient, being referred to as patient inventory? And she said, well, when you did that cost-benefit study, how did you value the knowing care of a nurse? What hard number did you put on that? And of course, you can't put a number on it. It's impossible. And because we are computerizing everything, we have all these numbers, and they carry incredible power. I mean, you know, one of the rules of newspapering is if you can get a hard number in the lead, you know, you can get on the front page. It's just so attractive, hard numbers. Don't give me ambiguities. And the other values are being driven out. And you just, I mean, you know, we all just can see that, you know, from fast food shops to grocery stores. I mean, everything in our life we see that. The other values are being driven out by these numbers. I don't know how you deal with that. But it's hard. And I think we got to try to deal with it. And the way to try to deal with it is become aware of all these little examples. You know, how the Census Bureau data, block by block, on the early version of the computer was used to help round up the Japanese Americans on the West Coast. That's a big deal. That was a major contribution to a very sad chapter in our life. This is not, you know, just small things. You know, one final story, and I'll let it go. It's one of the reporters at the Times lives in an apartment building, and he has gotten to know a woman who works for the Drug Enforcement Agency. She's a middle-level executive in the Drug Enforcement Agency. And she's single and has normal interest in the opposite sex, and a middle-aged guy moved into the apartment and who was quite attractive, and she decided to check him out. So she got his license number, and of course she has access to the DEA computer, and she did a big check on him, and he was very nice. You know, everything was fine. And she managed to run into him on the elevator. They became friends, and everything was going along fine, and she then confessed to him that she had done this check on him, and he was so offended that the relationship broke up. And controlling information is very, very hard. It really is slippery. I said this is the last story, but I'll tell one more. Again, we were sitting here talking about this. 10 years ago, the commission that runs the Los Angeles Police Department did an investigation of the Red Squad files in the Los Angeles Police Department. And they found it was mostly dominated by gossip about city councilmen who didn't like the police department, you know, or criticized Chief Gaines, or a lot of gossip. And the commission ordered the police department to destroy this file. Well, there was one policeman who didn't like that order, so he took all the files home and put them onto his home computer. And just recently it's come out, this is a little bit murky, that he has passed on this file to a right-wing group in Arlington, which may have passed it on to the CIA, etc., and other police departments that are interested in it. And you know, it's very hard to kill information once we get it out there, and to control it. And so I asked for your your help in thinking about these problems and talking to congressmen and talking to your clients and worrying about these questions, because it's scary for all of us. I haven't gotten into how I believe it's changing representative government, but that involves instant polling, more and more polling, subsidizing congressmen with free computer time and the francs, so that it makes it very hard to challenge incumbent congressmen. It involves the NSA being, I believe, outside of the Constitution, outside of legislative control, outside of the control of the executive branch, outside of checks and balances. And I think we have to worry about this, or very hard, or as Jacques Ellul argues in Technological Society, we will end up with a kind of benevolent police state that we all want, in a way, and where freedom really disappears, and where spontaneity disappears, and where we all kind of, live very cautious, careful lives. And I think it's a true worry. It hasn't beeped yet, but that's all why don't we throw it open for questions? Did it beep?
No.
No, all right. Why don't we throw it open for questions? Yeah.
Several months ago, I heard some experts talking about the fact that there is more raw computer power now in the hands of the population in terms of personal computers and so forth than there is in the federal government. He also said that within 5 years, every man, woman, and child over the age of 5 will have access to a computer. Not necessarily own one, but have access to it. And I'm wondering, I'd like to get your reaction to the impact this will have on all the things that you're talking about.
As you know, I'm sure many of you made this argument. I have heard this thesis expressed many times, that the personal computer will balance out the power of large government bureaucracies and large private bureaucracies. And I can't say that's not going to happen. That may be true. I think it's easy to argue that the opposite is true. That what personal computers do is, when you get one, it plugs you into the large databases that keep track more and more of what you're thinking and what you're buying and what you're banking and when you enter and leave the house and what you vote on and, all of those things. And that the power of the large organizations, the capital they have, the expertise, the experience, the ability to work 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, makes the hope that the personal computer will, save us and that this will give us maintain freedom and democracy through this. I think you can make a very strong argument that the exact opposite is true. I mean, and we'll know in 10 years. To me, the idea that a group of environmentalists are going to send smoke signals to each other, on their home computer, and do in or control Exxon, that doesn't seem likely to me. I mean, the databases, who controls the databases, who puts the information in, who's counting, who's coming in and recording it and keeping track. I don't see that necessarily as guaranteeing our freedom. I mean, I think it may be even a danger.
I have a question about the great unchecked, unbalanced power of the media. And it's also a question of personal ethics. You've staked out a position on how you see computers and communications affecting things. And that's one hat you're wearing. You're an author, you're a newsmaker. Another hat you're wearing is
A reporter.
You're a reporter for the New York Times, and you're presenting objective, unbiased,
Supposedly.
and within the mantle of the First Amendment. You have all the special prerogatives of the First Amendment. How do you see that affecting? And you're one of many, many talented writers and reporters who are wearing these multiple hats?
I think that's a good question, a hard question. It's one I worry about. And there's not a good answer to it. The New York Times, I think more than most papers, has a pretty rigorous discipline that a story, you know, you go to both sides and you know, you try to balance things, and I think I have a pretty good reputation for doing that. I mean, maybe you saw I did a story on the White House putting in an electronic mail system, and I, you know, talked to OMB and I put that, and then I raised a couple of questions about, I mean, they told me that they're going to use this electronic mail system, hopefully as opening wedge to make all the government computers compatible. And I think that was a balanced story. I view the book, you know, as my statement, as my view of the world, and when I write, I try to balance things out. Now, the stories I select, I mean, while each story may be pretty balanced, the stories I select obviously are going to reflect some of my biases. There's no question about that. And that may be in some ways unfair. I would argue that there's so much being written on the other side that it's maybe good. I mean, there's so much hype, as you know, about this industry and how wonderful it is and all the things it's bringing us and all the glories and everything, that one or two people writing stories raising questions, it ends up being balanced in a way. But it's a very good question, which there's not a perfect answer for. You know, I wrote about police corruption in New York and the criminal justice system, and I kept writing about it and writing about it and writing. The cops said, geez, you're Johnny One Note, all you do is do this, and there's no good stuff about the police. And I say, well, now really, look at your newspaper. That's baloney. All the stories are about how the policeman solved the murder, or how the policeman, you know, found the babies and brought them to safety, or how the policeman arrested Joe Mafioso. And in fact, there's an enormous number of positive stories in the paper that you're not counting. And I think the paper, when you look at it, is just overwhelming pro-development of the computer world. And my feeble voice isn't unbalancing, I mean, isn't putting that out of whack. You see my stories, and you're more aware of them because you don't even, you know, your eyes just gloss over at the hype that's in the paper. Yeah?
Yeah, I'm a little concerned about your statement that computers were changing our ethics. I don't believe that for 1 minute.
Okay.
The earliest time I've heard that quote about gentlemen reading other gentlemen's mail was attributed to Secretary of State Stettinius. Pardon? Was it Stimson?
Yes.
Okay. But that was a long time ago. And gentlemen were reading other gentlemen's mail then, too. Our
Stimson couldn't look at his employees' desk drawers, though, and he didn't.
No, he didn't, but certainly in businesses, the tradition was, at least according to Charles Dickens, that what was in the employee's drawer belonged to the employer. I like things a lot better now when people don't look in my desk drawers and I don't look in theirs. Joe McCarthy, and before him Martin Dies, certainly didn't display the kind of ethical side of American society that we would like to believe us to be. I don't believe that computers are changing our ethics. I think they're giving unethical people much greater scope to do mischief. But I think that the question of ethics and the question of what are ethics and what are computers really have to be separated.
Well, I mean, when you say computers are giving unethical people much greater opportunities, I'll settle for that. That's fine. I agree with that completely. But I say that's changing our ethics. Yeah. Well, I think it's changing if the increasing opportunity, I mean, it's to do wrong, if computers are increasing the opportunity to do unethical behavior, increasing the opportunity.
I think they're increasing the scope.
The scope,
But,
okay.
But when you say that something
I'll take that.
is changing your ethics, I don't believe that it is changing what what I see implied as the will to do wrong. That I don't think has changed at all.
Well, I think opportunity is a big part of the battle. You know, if the money isn't lying there on the table, you're not going to take it, all right? And if it is lying there on the table, you will. If the opportunity to abuse...
Would you say then the credit cards are changing their ethics?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
It's obvious that you feel the United States has a great deal to do to counter some of the things that you view with alarm. Do you find any models in other governments that are addressing these issues more successfully?
I don't know that much about other countries. I think Robin probably knows more than I do. I know that there are a lot, I mean, it's a very tough problem. I understand that Sweden, for example, has established a very powerful agency that has been authorized to license all computer databases and inspect them. That's, you know, in our views, that's like putting the fox in charge of the chicken coop. And, you know, how you deal with this problem is very, very hard. Marsha McNaughton over there was involved in writing the Privacy Act. And it had a lot of things that were good, and it had a lot of things that did not get into law. One of the things that did not get into law was that Senator Ervin wanted to have a permanent body, which was not a law enforcement agency, but that had the right to hold hearings. Marcia, correct me if this is incorrect. Hold hearings, publicize, examine, write reports, whatever, to help people understand what was going on. That did not pass. I think that would be a very important first thing. And if I was the industry, which I'm not, as you know, if I was the industry, if I was IBM, I would push very hard for such a permanent body to publicize the problems and to search for solutions. That's the last one.
Privacy is clearly an added cost to doing business. I mean, if somebody's keeping medical records, insurance records, to go to all the safeguards to make sure the records are private will add to the consumer cost, theoretically. Should an individual have a right to waive those rights? In other words, you can get an interest rate of 10% if we don't have to keep it all private and everything just out there on the market, or if we have to go to this added expense for preserving these records and all these safeguards, your loan will be 12%. Should an individual have the right to waive those rights, and if so, and then if one says no, because he may not be as well informed, there's a certain element of elitism there that some of the...
Yeah, I'll go with elitism. I mean, I'll go with constitutional-based values. I don't think you ought to be able to waive your rights myself.
Dave, that's not necessarily true, Neil. Aetna and IBM have found by adopting the methods and techniques to keep garbage and traditional information out of their databases, it's more economical. So it does not necessarily follow that to institute privacy costs you more.
Everybody buy the book. Thank you for having me.
Again, the name of the book is The Rise of the Computer State. Those of you who have not been to the breakfast before and would like to receive notices about it in the future, just give me your business card before you leave, or drop a line to 316 Pennsylvania Avenue, Washington 20003. We'll see you next month, September 16th, I believe is the date. We're looking for a speaker from the State Department. Incidentally, there are brochures for the annual meeting for the Information Industry Association on the table out front. If you plan to go to that, and I would urge you to, of course, pick up the brochure now. The next time we meet will be after the cutoff date for the discount price, so take advantage of the discount. Thank you all. See you next month.
Thank you for having us.